we are so happy you are with us today. We are here to tell Congress that our families deserve to thrive, not to scrape by. So let me just go ahead now. We will kick off this event with Reverend Jimmy Hawkins from the Presbyterian Church, who will bring us in with prayer. So everybody give it up for Jimmy, please. Woo!
Thank you, Laura. We are gathered here to proclaim a call for care, not cuts. We need a moral budget. This rally to oppose the proposed debt ceiling bill put forth by Speaker of the House of Representatives Kevin McCarthy to raise the debt ceiling by imposing deep cuts, environmental protections, college aid, and would impose work requirements on those receiving federal benefits, including food stamps, by stiffer work rules impacting temporary assistance for needy families and supplemental nutrition assistance program beneficiaries. It is immoral to reallocate trillions of dollars to benefit wealthy households at the expense of investments in the most vulnerable in the nation. This is an attack on human beings and would leave more people hungry, homeless, and without health coverage. We are gathered to raise our voices in opposition to this effort to gain political advantage while producing no real benefit to the nation's children. Let us join ourselves together in a word of prayer. God of compassion, mercy, and love, please give us your heart to hear the cries of those who suffer from poverty, neglect, and selfish hoarding of resources by the few and powerful. Make us unrelenting in our combined efforts to counter the powers and principalities that offer no meaningful solutions to the problems we face. Hear their cry for relief and enable us to stand with them as advocates for justice. In your holy name, amen. I would like to introduce Laura Packard, who is a healthcare activist and cancer survivor.
Woo! Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Laura Packard, and I'm the founder of Healthcare Voices, organizing adults with serious medical conditions. 6 years ago, I walked into a doctor's office with a nagging cough and walked out with a stage 4 cancer diagnosis. But I'm still here today thanks to the treatments I was able to receive through my insurance, the Affordable Care Act. But the day after my first chemotherapy appointment, radical extremists in the U.S. House voted to repeal the Affordable Care Act with no replacement. And we're all here today because radical extremists in the House are again going after our benefits, meaning millions of Americans with Medicaid, veterans' health benefits, and much more could be at risk of losing their health care, could be at risk of losing their school lunches, the food that feeds their families, the roofs over their heads, and much more. The speakers today will talk more about all of the very important programs at risk. But I wanted to remind everyone that behind every program there is a real person. Our health, our safety, our lives depend on these programs. And so we're here to call on Congress to vote for care, not cuts, because many of us will not be here without it. Thank you. Next, I'm pleased to introduce Nicole from Caring Across Generations.
Yeah!
Thank you so much, Laura. And I'm so glad to be here, but kind of wish I wasn't, because it feels like deja vu all over again. Because at the same time when advocates all over and supported it the way that they want to be supported, this bill would greatly limit the Medicaid program, and the work requirements are really bad. They would greatly impact family caregivers, disabled people. It really would limit, the only thing it would limit is people's ability to work. And it would also be probably on Medicaid for their own health care and also SNAP benefits. 40% of direct care workers rely on public benefits because the pay is so low. The only way to increase that pay is to raise investments into the Medicaid program and not cut. This bill would cut Medicaid spending over 10 years by over $100 billion. So 1.5 million people would lose their coverage, but it's even worse than that, because when you're talking about a cut that big to programs, the first place it's going to hit is quote-unquote optional programs. Those programs are home and community-based services for aging adults and for disabled people. Those would be the first places that states would cut because they would have no choice. This bill is tying the hands of states, and it is doing so on the back of making sure that we need to fight for corporations and the wealthy to pay their fair share, so that we're not talking about limiting things or cutting things. We're talking about building things, building the care infrastructure that this country desperately needs, instead of cutting it when it's already crumbling. It is an honor to be here today, and I know that together we can fight for care, not cuts, and fight against this problematic and harmful budget bill. And it's important to remember that this is just about paying the country's credit card bill. This isn't about money that has to be spent in the future. It's about money that was spent in the past and paying for it by making these detrimental cuts to families that will be impacted. And that includes families like my own, my brother who receives HCBS in a state that already has a 15,000 person waiting list. He could go right back to the end of that waiting list when cuts like these come into play. That's, again, to Laura's point, the faces of these issues and why we need to stand together to fight against them. And next, it's my honor to introduce Rabbi Pez. Or Luis.
Yeah.
So great to be here with everybody. FRAC strongly opposes Speaker McCarthy's bill that would arbitrarily throw people off of SNAP and other vital benefits. Oh, thank you. Can't hear me. We oppose this bill because it's going to arbitrarily throw people off of SNAP and other vital benefits, all in exchange for raising the country's debt limit. This is not only counterproductive, it's cruel. The Speaker's bill would make SNAP time limits that are already in place, worse by adding older workers to those who are at risk of going hungry. And this would also include veterans, those re-entering the workforce after incarceration, many chronically unhoused individuals, as well as people with mental or physical disabilities who will probably be mistakenly left off. Many of the people that would be impacted by the time limits, they are actively in the labor market, but they either can't find jobs or they have too few hours in the jobs that they have. And studies have shown time and again that time limits, they do nothing. They do nothing to improve employability or earnings. What they do is they deepen our nation's hunger crisis. And this is simply wrong. Let me be clear. Access to food should not have a time limit. Congress needs to keep their hands off of SNAP and pass a moral budget that ensures people have the nutrition and the other resources that they need to thrive. We urge Congress to take a much more productive path by permanently removing time limits. Representatives Barbara Lee, Alma Adams, and 40 other co-sponsors have introduced a bill to eliminate time limits on SNAP eligibility. The Improving Access to Nutrition Act, or H.R. 1510, it's a long overdue change that is going to permanently promote food security and equity for people with low incomes. Because we know hungry people, they cannot wait. Thank you very much. And now I'll pass it over to Adila Sharif from the Islamic Center of Maryland.
Hi everybody, my name is Adila Sharif and I am with the Islamic Center of Maryland, located in Montgomery County, which is one of the richest counties in Maryland. Since COVID started, we started distributing food. At the start of the pandemic, we know that the food need was real and we had 500 to 1,000 cars coming for food every time. Fast forward 3 years and we're still there. We're still distributing food with partners like Islamic Relief, county, last weekend was Eid weekend. I took the weekend off for the volunteers, and I had people reaching out saying, "Are you distributing food this weekend? We really need the food." To put things in perspective, on April 2nd, we hosted a food drive. It was supposed to be a rain weekend, so we did the advertising very late on Wednesday for a Sunday distribution. I was not expecting that many people, so I told people started lining up at 12 o'clock for a distribution that starts at 4 p.m. That's where we are right now. This is Montgomery County. This is where people think the need is not there, but the need is very real. A lot of the people that were in the lines in the beginning were seniors. This was the 60-year-old with their 80-year-old mom, and it was just heart-wrenching to serve them or make them wait. So when we think that COVID is gone, food cuts can happen, that is not true. We see it on the ground. Food insecurity is very real. We really, really need to take care of it. Thank you. I'd like to introduce Zach Cashman.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Zachary, and I'm with Americans for Tax Fairness. A little closer? Okay.
Yeah, just
So I'm with Americans for Tax Fairness.
Yeah, perfect.
We are a coalition of over 400 national, state, and local organizations dedicated to making the American tax code work for everyone, not just the wealthy few. So the McCarthy budget that is being voted on today is designed to do what Republicans always do, which is run up the debt through reckless tax cuts, cry about the large debt we have, and then demand Democrats work with them to cut vital programs to address the manufactured crisis. This is straight out of the Republican playbook, and we know who this budget represents because of who McCarthy went to go announce it in front of. He didn't go to a senior care facility. He didn't go to a union hall. He didn't go to a preschool. He went to Wall Street. The fact is, this budget is written by Wall Street's favorite party for Republicans' favorite contributors. So over 2 decades, Republicans have cut $10 trillion worth of taxes. And McCarthy has promised to cut another $3 trillion when the Republican Trump tax cuts expire in 2025. And in this very bill that is supposed to cut the deficit, it actually reduces revenue by $200 billion by slashing IRS funding, which is going to be used to prevent wealthy tax cheats from avoiding the taxes they owe. So if this budget gets passed, I believe Mark Zandi said that 784,000 jobs would be killed over the next 2 years. We're talking about 10 million people at risk of losing health care, 1 million mothers and children at risk of losing nutritional assistance, 11,000 fewer railway inspections, 200,000 fewer Head Start slots, 640,000 fewer housing vouchers, and 100,000 fewer teachers. This is a comically cruel budget, and luckily for us, there is actually a budget out there that promotes working families and children, and that is the Biden budget, which actually makes those critical investments and pays for it by closing corporate offshore loopholes, by making sure that wealthy business owners pay their fair share into Medicare, and by implementing a billionaire's minimum income tax to make sure that billionaires, the wealthiest in this country, don't pay a lower tax rate than nurses and teachers. This is a fraudulent budget to justify a fraudulent debt ceiling fight. We aren't going to stand for it. We're going to make sure Democrats aren't going to stand for it. And I'm sure with all of our work, this is not going to pass. So I am excited now to introduce Mary Novak, the Executive Director of Lobbying for Catholic Social Justice.
Thank you for coming out this afternoon. One thing we need to make absolutely clear in addressing this extreme budget proposal is that we reject its premise. And that premise is that it blames vital human needs programs for our deficit and subjects them to cruel cuts. The reality is, and you've been hearing that theme start to emerge, that deficit spending spikes are largely due to tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations. The Bush and Trump tax cuts disproportionately benefited the rich and corporations, and they are a major driving force for the national debt. And that was outlined recently in a report by the Center for American Progress. Let me repeat the numbers Zach just gave you. The original Bush tax cuts and their extensions have added $1.4 trillion to the national debt, and they will do that by the end of the year. The 2017 Trump tax cuts will add another $1.7 trillion in debt through 2023. And the GOP wants to renew those tax cuts in 2025, which would cost an additional $3 trillion. Now, the claim that you have to cut health, housing, and food to balance the budget is an absolute lie. If proponents of these cuts really cared about the deficit, they would raise the taxes on the ultra-wealthy and corporations rather than hurting workers and families. A functioning democracy invests in the very programs, and refusing to address the tax cuts at the expense of these programs is a moral choice. Today we are united in knowing that a just society with thriving communities is one that prioritizes human needs over the bottom line of the super wealthy and corporations. We have to put care above cuts. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Naveed Shah, Political Director of Common Defense.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. My name is Naveed Shah. I'm an Army veteran, served in Iraq, and I'm the Political Director of Common Defense, a progressive grassroots veterans organization. Republican leadership is grossly out of touch with the reality of everyday Americans. They don't know what a gallon of gas costs. They don't know what a gallon of milk costs. They don't know the price of eggs. They think the minimum wage, which hasn't changed in 14 years, is good enough, while regular people are struggling every day. Most Americans live paycheck to paycheck. One car accident or medical emergency away from financial ruin. Things like Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and veterans benefits provide a vital safety net. In this, the greatest and wealthiest country in the world, which I proudly served in the Army, we should be able to provide for our hardworking citizens so they can live with dignity and respect. We're gathered here today to make sure that our elected leaders make a simple promise: to protect our hard-earned benefits. Earned benefits. These are not handouts, especially veterans benefits. These are more like workers' compensation that we pay into every day with our blood, sweat, and tears, and hours and time that we put in. Veterans like me risk their lives and sacrifice their youth and health in service to our country, like I did when I deployed to Iraq. They earned those benefits the day they raised their right hand and swore an oath and signed a check payable to the United States of America for any amount, up to and including their life. In exchange, we trained and deployed to the furthest corners of the globe to fight in the name of freedom, democracy, and the American way of life. None of those benefits, none of those values matter now if they just want to make cuts. The Republican plan would make the Department of Veterans Affairs lose 81,000 jobs. That would cost veterans time to receive the health care that they earn. We already have thousands of veterans waiting in line to get their health care. And after passing one of the biggest bills to provide for veterans last year, for the Republicans to turn around immediately and try to cut it again is unconscionable. Every Memorial Day, every Veterans Day, every July 4th, they want to put their hands around veterans and military and say, we love the troops, support the troops. The troops are demanding that you not only provide for us, but for our friends and for our families. With that, I will go ahead and pass it to my friend Bruce Leslie from First Focus Campaign for Children.
Thank you all for being here today, and just want to open by saying First Focus Campaign for Children strongly opposes this legislation. It is nonsensical. is nonsensical in the name of the next generation to make 22% across the board cuts in funding for education, early childhood, child health, such as and including Medicaid, child care, child nutrition, housing, and child abuse prevention. In addition, it even cuts funding for kids in foster care. Harming children does not help them. It is also a disaster for our nation's future. Kids need care, not cuts. The fact is that we know investing in children works and that it is an incredible long-term return on investment. The American people know this as well. In a poll last year by Lake Research Partners, by a 90 to 8% margin, voters believe, quote, investing in children helps improve their lives, development, and outcomes. This bill destroys that. And so the vast majority of Americans understand that this bill is the wrong approach, and yet House leadership is choosing to disproportionately cut funding to children and families, particularly those most in need. Last night, we saw them put ethanol ahead of children and families. Congress should soundly reject it and stop targeting children and families for cuts. Next, I would introduce Kim Johnson with the National Low Income Housing Coalition.
Bruce, if I can just take the mic. The champion of the House is here. We're none other than Rosa DeLauro from Connecticut. Come on, Rosa.
Oh, God, you guys are so fabulous. Thank you so much. You know, I'm going to just start by saying you are the wind beneath our wings. Thank you. Thank you so much. You know, I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. I thought I wasn't going to get out of the hearing in time to be able to come and see you, but I am, because we need to push back. We need to push back against what we are calling the Default on America Act. It is the debt default, and it is going to make cuts. It's going to put this nation at real risk. I thank all of you here today, and I'm excited about your rallying. I'm excited about your responsiveness, your advocacy. You have all been out there en masse, where you are creating the energy and making it possible for the rest of this country to know what is going on in Washington, D.C. You are that external pressure that we need to apply to this government today. It is outrageous what they are intending to do. Preventing a default. Preventing a default is an obligation that we have as members of Congress. That doesn't mean we need to do what they've intended to do, is to link the annual appropriations process that are funding all of our federal programs, all of our services to people across this country, to say that they are going to hold a debt ceiling hostage if we don't make these drastic cuts. It's irresponsible and it is shameless. It guarantees chaos in our process. We will go from one crisis to another if they continue. You know that I have now the ranking member of Labor, Education, Health, and Human Services. What am I concerned about? What am I concerned about in this subcommittee? The default bill will take food, yes, food off of people's table. It is meant to do that. Nutrition assistance is on the chopping block. Make no mistake about that. It says to people that you cannot go to school anymore. We are going to take away a Pell Grant. We're going to cut it back by $1,000, making it impossible for 6.6 million people who are on Pell Grants at the moment. It denies health care to people, and it takes away their homes. It would kick 300,000 children out of child care and out of Head Start. Imagine what we are thinking about, what they're thinking about doing to our kids. It is about slashing nutrition for more than 1 million seniors. and increases heating and cooling costs for 5 million households. It makes college more expensive, taking away the opportunity for 80,000 people to attend college. And I told you about the Pell Grant. It drastically cuts medical care for our veterans. They can't get away with it. It is there. This bill, you know, I listened to people for 6 hours last night in a Rules Committee meeting. I will tell you, Lordy, you know, there's got to be some sort of an award for sitting there listening and not turning the tables over on people. But they say, oh no, we're not going to cut defense. We're not going to cut veterans. We're not going to cut Homeland Security. No, but they are going to cut everything else that has to do with the services that the federal government provides to the American people. And it can't be done. They can't speak out of both sides of their mouth. And that's what we need to prevent them from doing. You know, when we talk about veterans, and I'm going to mention this because I will tell you, last night, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they had no idea that the passage of this bill, which could happen this afternoon, not sure they have the votes yet, but they're doing everything they can to get the votes. They'll sell their soul the way he sold his soul in order to become Speaker of the House. $2 billion immediately gets rescinded for veterans' health care. It's immediate. By the end of this year, they care, but they don't. And your end hunger now, that they could care less about. It discussed nutrition assistance last night, of how they would talk about people who get food stamps, people who help to try to bridge the gap when they fall on difficult times. But that doesn't mean anything. And God knows they will not consider additional revenues that place a tax, increase of taxes on the wealthiest individuals. They'll talk about the debt, but they could have cared less about the debt when they provided $1.7 trillion, almost $2 trillion to the richest 1/10 of 1% of the people in this country. And they provided them with a tax break, and they did that for corporations who do not pay any taxes at all in this country. That was not important to them. So, look, what you need to know is that we are relying on you. We really are. I reached out earlier to ask for help. You have been there. You know what Congress is. Congress is an institution that really responds to external pressure. You are that external pressure, and I can't tell you how much it is so important right now. We have an opportunity to create a national movement, an outcry against what they are doing, and the word has got to get out to local communities that this is what is involved. And believe me, and you got to put the pressure, because I believe some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they have no idea. They have no idea of the depth of cuts that are in there. And some of them care deeply about these issues. I listened this morning about people who talk about, at a labor age hearing, about what they're concerned about in their districts. So we need to let them know what the full brunt of what their districts will face if these cuts go through. You can't have it both ways. You can't talk about, and it could be as much as a 30% cut if you hold defense harmless, if you hold veterans harmless, if you hold Homeland Security. Then we're looking at everything else at around a 30% cut. It would be the biggest cut in non-defense programs in this country's recorded history. We cannot let that happen. They would place a 1% growth and cap the investments over the next 10 years. We're not going back. We got out of a 10-year sequester. Well, hell no, you're not going to go back to what they tried to do to us before. So what you need to do is to impress. Let's deal with the debt ceiling, pass the damn debt ceiling, and then let's deal, as we have been dealing, with the appropriations bill, and we'll go toe-to-toe in fighting to maintain the programs that we think are so relevant to people. I thank you. I can't thank you enough for standing. Post the social, knock on doors. You're down here, but get your folks in the district to knock on doors, to do press conferences. You know, I wish I could take a leave of absence. I'd go out and organize the country, for God's sake. But I'm going to rely on all of you to do that. That's what we need to do. We can win this fight, my friends. I've never been more confident that we can win this because of the scale of what they're prepared to do to the American people. Let's take it on. Let's fight. Let's stand together, and let's win. Thank you. Thank you.
Let's celebrate Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro. Congresswoman, you called out to us Ayeka. Everybody say Ayeka. Ayeka. That's Jewish for where are you? Everybody say Hineni. 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 Hineni means here I am. And for thousands of years, God called out and we responded, here I am. God called to Abraham and Sarah and they said, here I am. God called to Moses and Miriam and the Jewish people said, here I am. When we are called by the folks among us who are the least of these, when we are called by those who are suffering because they are unhoused, when those who are starving because they are unfed, when those who are sick and dying because they have no health care, we say Hineni. Everybody say Hineni. Hineni. Here I am and here we are as a faith community for the Jewish community. I stand here, Rabbi Jonah Pesner, director of the Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, the largest and most diverse denomination in Jewish life. 2 million Jews associate themselves with the values of this tradition that says, having just celebrated the festival of Passover, having been reminded as we held up our matzah and said, this is the bread of affliction. It was the bread of our enslavement. It was the unleavened bread that didn't have time to rise because of our escape, our refuge, our journey out of enslavement. And then we say, let all who are hungry come and eat. And throughout Jewish history, Jews have done that ritual, have associated the ancient suffering of our enslavement with the moral call every day and this day to those who are hungry. Let all who are hungry come and eat. And the tradition is then to open our doors widely. What an abomination that we live in a moment when Jewish people go to open their doors and say, let all who are hungry come and eat. There are millions and millions of people who lack housing, who lack health care, and who lack basic food to live and to thrive and survive. Just as the Passover festival ended, I sat with a family who was observing the 1-year anniversary, the yahrzeit of their son's death. Their son who died on the streets of Los Angeles, unhoused, poor, and lacking care. That story could be played out in all of our mosques and in our churches and in our meeting houses, in our schools, in our community centers. Our people are dying. And now our elected officials, the folks who represent us, have the audacity to threaten to cut SNAP, Medicaid, and housing? Ayeka, United States of America. Ayeka, members of Congress. Where are you? Collectively, let us respond with a clear moral voice. Hineni. Amen.
I'm Debbie Weinstein with the Coalition on Human Needs. It's an honor to stand with you and the people who are watching from around the country on this very consequential day. We're gathered here because of a great chasm between what our nation needs and what the House of Representatives may do today. What we need is care, not cuts, a moral budget. What Speaker McCarthy has put in front of the House is the opposite. Slashing, extreme cuts that would take vital services from education to housing to Meals on Wheels to public health to environmental cleanups down to a smaller share of our economy than we've seen since the 1960s, down nearly 60% over the next 10 years. That's untenable. It's ludicrous. It's harmful. And that's what they're standing for today. And that assumes all the cuts are directed to the domestic and international programs we need. And, as you've all been hearing, taking food and health care away from people with very low incomes, kicking people when they're down, and pretending it's about encouraging work. But there are two more very bad things about this very bad deal. One, while it takes away services and essential aid from millions, it would stop the IRS from collecting taxes that are already owed by the rich and corporations. And while it says it would allow us to pay the nation's bills, let's be real about this. This legislation is so extreme, it's not going anywhere. And so we are left precariously on the brink of default disaster. So we're here to say together to Speaker McCarthy and his caucus, step back from the precipice.
Yeah.
Stop this reckless threat of instant recession. Authorize the Treasury to pay the bills Congress has already approved. Do that responsible thing. And then engage in debate of whether the nation really wants the services that we're all here to protect. And I can tell you the nation does want it. We've had, even over the last several days, 50,000 letters straight to the House on this.
Yeah.
And if you add up all the letters that individuals, constituents have sent over the last number of weeks on health care, on SNAP, on education, on child care, on so many of the things you care about. It's over 450,000 letters. People care. They are with us all over the country, and we can't stop. So thank you very much. And now it's time to hear from Kim Johnson.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. It's my honor to be here with you all today. I'm Kim Johnson, Policy Manager at the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, and I'm here today to talk about the impact that the draconian cuts proposed in the Limit, Save, Grow Act would have on vital, affordable housing and homelessness resources funded through the federal government. If this dangerous bill were enacted, nearly 1 million households currently receiving rental assistance through HUD's programs would lose the assistance they need to keep a roof over their heads. If this dangerous bill were enacted, nearly 120,000 fewer people experiencing homelessness would receive the help they need to find safe, stable, affordable housing. If this dangerous bill were enacted, millions of families with young children, older adults, veterans, and people with disabilities would lose the access to critical assistance they rely on for stable housing, pushing them into eviction and, in most cases, homelessness. As we stand here, House Republicans are debating whether to take away critical resources from families with the lowest incomes, all in the name of a quote-unquote balanced budget. It is unfathomable to balance the federal budget by gutting the services that families and need. The nation is facing a shortage of 7.3 million homes, affordable, available, and accessible to households with the lowest incomes, and there is not a single state or congressional district exempt. When families cannot afford affordable housing and are forced to spend over half of their incomes on rent alone, they must make impossible decisions between keeping a roof over their heads or putting food on the table. Individuals, families, and communities cannot absorb the loss of billions of dollars in federal funding. If we are truly dedicated to ending the nation's affordable housing crisis and homelessness crisis, Congress must expand, not cut, federal investments in programs like housing vouchers, homelessness assistance, public housing, and other vital resources that help people and families with the lowest incomes have a safe place to call home. Thank you again for inviting me. It's my pleasure to turn the microphone to my friend Samuel Chu, a national organizer and advisor for Maison.
Thank you. My name is Samuel Chu. I'm the national organizer and senior advisor for Maison, a Jewish response to hunger. The word Maison actually means sustenance. And in this debate and fight that we're in, we're constantly given these terms about abstract ideas. But when it comes down to it, we're speaking about people. Over the last 38 years, Maison has been working to end hunger among people of all faiths and all backgrounds here in the United States and in Israel. In particular, we work among populations that are often ignored and stereotyped. Single mothers, veterans, LGBTQ seniors, Indian country tribal members. Because we believe, and make no mistake, the people who are trying to pass this bill don't want you to know the people who they are hurting. As Maison, we, in no uncertain term, oppose this proposal. First, because it will cut off vital daily sustenance for millions of people who depend on SNAP. Second, as many of the speakers already pointed out, it builds and fills the access of the wealthy on the backs of those who are most vulnerable. But we also oppose this, most importantly and equally importantly, because this, instead of what they label as incentivizing people to work, is actually dehumanizing our neighbors. So these cuts, the rhetorics behind it are not new. For decades, we have blamed the poor to score political points. And that this exercise that Speaker McCarthy has brought up has only one central focus. That is his personal political ambition and a pathway to stay in power. That is an epic failure of public leadership. And so, us, Maison, what we ask, what we hope, not only it is to protect the vital services and the food benefits that 40-some million Americans are facing daily, but most importantly, that this is an obligation, a fundamental core values in our faith traditions as well as in our country. That it is not an extra. It is not when we have fed ourselves, then do we go take care of those who are poor. It is not to take care and protect those who are the most vulnerable. It is only if it serves our political interests. The inherent dignity of each and every person is the value that is at the heart of what Maison believes and what the Jewish traditions teach us. And so I take the word and the call of Representative Rosa, who asked us, implored us, commissioned us, and deputized us to organize this country, to knock on doors, to speak out, and not be afraid to make those who are seeking to enrich themselves and their own political interests feel uncomfortable and ashamed of what they're doing. The cuts that are being proposed, this deal that is being moved forward, if it does make any traction, will make our country less secure, less free, and less human. And that is not acceptable. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the partners for it. So now let me introduce, keep us on our toes here.
Thank you all so much. And first of all, thank everybody for standing up for democracy and fighting for your country here today. My name is Will Addick. I'm the Executive Director of the Union Veterans Council at the AFL-CIO, and I'm a proud combat infantry veteran. We represent over 1.5 million working veterans, many who are sitting at home right now wondering if they will have a job in a month. And think about that. At 17 years old, I decided to serve my country, and I served my country not for a bunch of millionaires on Wall Street, but for every single person here, every single person willing to take a stand. I've been knocking on doors all week, and I've been getting lied to my face. Constantly. We're going to carve out the fence. We're going to carve out veterans. Well, first of all, they had to be educated what's going to happen to veterans. Like Naveed said, millions of missed appointments. Increased wait time for people who desperately need to get their benefits processed. Things that we've all been working for in the trenches for decades to fix. That's only one small piece of that. Right? Veterans are this massive group, and we're just regular people. But when those jerks said, we're going to leave out the feds, we're going to leave out veterans, I said, where's it going to come from? It's going to come from hungry people. It's going to come from homeless people. It's going to come from people who are working the jobs that make this country run every single day. Woo! And a lot of them are veterans, right? A lot of them are veterans. 18,000 veterans who deserve to have an honored burial at a federal cemetery are not going to be able to have that right. Think about that. These are the people who wrap their hands around the flag and around veterans like me and love to take pictures. But really, I'm not here to fight just for veterans. I'm here to fight for everybody. Yes. Woo! Because that's what I did when I was young, and I'm going to keep doing it. And you know what? We've got over 1 million veterans that rely on SNAP. And they're wondering if they're going to have to put their kids to bed hungry at night. That's not going to fly my way. I'm sick of the lies. I'm sick of corporations being put above regular people. Mm-hmm. It's not the American dream that I fought for. But the American dream is right here. Yeah. Each one of you, I want you to remember that. I can thank for my service, and everybody who's fighting in the trenches on this fight are serving your country. And you're doing it real, in a real way. More than anybody else I can think of right now, because you're up here on the hill. When these cuts come, if they pass these bills, we have to be ready. We have to be ready to fight back and give them a black eye. And I'll be standing here with you. Our veterans in the labor movement will be standing with you. Every American that supports the real American dream should be standing there too. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah!
Thank you all for being here. My name is Melissa Botas. I'm with the National Women's Law Center.
Yeah!
I want to start off by saying the House GOP plan to defund on America is a bad deal for our families and a great deal for the billionaires and wealthy corporations. If enacted, 100,000 children would lose their child care. 200,000 children would be kicked out of Head Start. Meanwhile, the richest corporations and households would have an easier time evading their taxes. To Zach's point earlier, I'd like to see Speaker McCarthy go to a Head Start classroom and explain to 4-year-olds and the early educators who are oftentimes struggling to make ends meet why they can't have services because a billionaire needs to evade his taxes.
Right.
It also sets up a false choice. We're either going to gut the services that children and families rely on or send the economy into a tailspin through default. We're here to say today that women and families who depend on us, we are not political leverage for a manufactured crisis. We are not bargaining chips to allow billionaires to evade their taxes. The care that we provide, both paid and unpaid, is the backbone of the economy, and it has been undervalued for far too long. Today we say we do not buy into these false choices. Congress needs to do its job and pass a clean debt ceiling. Without delay, without precondition, as we have done countless times before. And then we need to get to the work of investing in our families. President Biden just signed a historic executive order to support caregiving. His budget proposed historic investments in child care and early education, in paid leave, in home and community-based services, all while fair share in taxes and reducing the deficit. There is a pathway forward here that does value our families. And today we say, care, not cuts! Care, not cuts! Care, not cuts! Care, not cuts! I'm going to turn it over to Lauren Relaford from Sojourners, the political director.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lauren Relaford, and like she said, I am a social worker, I'm political director, but today I'm just going to talk to you as a human. In part, because growing up, I always understood that we were at war against poverty. But today I stand here because y'all in that building have a war on the poor.
Right.
And I'm really confused, right? Because apparently a lot of folks had a lot of things to say about folks on SNAP. So let me tell you a story about what it's actually like to be on SNAP. Let me tell you a story of what it was like in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, to have to go to the office, I'm dating myself a little bit, and sit there and waste a whole Saturday watching other despondent people practically beg to get a book of stamps so they could afford not crab legs, not shrimp, not even boxed cereal, a bag of cereal. And let me tell you what it was like in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade to sit in line and have people stare at us and make comments, because the paper money that we were putting down, not only was it different colors, but it clearly separated us from the rest of the quote-unquote deserving human beings and the poor. And let me tell you what it was like as a young child to watch her mother do everything in her power to raise 2 children on her own while going to school full-time, while working a work-study job that only paid $75 a week. Let me tell you about that woman y'all are talking about. That woman you would have taken off the rolls because she didn't work enough. But she was working 2 jobs and going to school full-time, so what? So I could stand here right now. So let me tell you what this war on the poor really does. Let me tell you what your rhetoric really does. Because people hear that. And I'm a success story, and I don't want you all to point out and say, this is what we want. We survived in spite of the things and the changes to the program that you made. We survived in spite of your hatred of poor people in a capitalist system that you by design have created. Because let me tell you, a lot of people in that building see poverty as a normal function of society. But let me tell you about the God that I believe in. The God that I believe in always fed people. So much so that he even had his son feed people. The God that I believe in is a liberator. The God that I believe in is a justice maker. The God that I believe in is going to remember your vote when you talk about Jesus out of one side of your mouth and make cuts out of the other. The God that I believe in looks at you and wonders why you talk down on people in low-wage jobs when Scripture clearly says their wages cry out to you. Why are you not focused on making sure people have enough money as who don't have, instead of making sure that fat cats have more than enough? Because let me tell you, with my little nonprofit check, I still owed $6 to the federal government. So you damn right I'm mad that someone who makes my salary in a month, what I make in a year, pays nothing. And then is going to have the audacity to come on the Hill and demand more? When there are people who are literally like, I just want some bread. And not even white bread, wheat bread. But oh wait, I can't get it because poor people don't deserve it. So let me tell you this. Why I am demanding care, not cuts. And why I'm speaking to those who still have some semblance of shame left in their hearts. Because those who are beyond reproach, I'm telling you, that meeting at the pearly gates is not going to be real cute at all for you. So let me tell you about those who still care about saving their souls, because Proverbs 3:27 says, if you have the power to help, Do not withhold. Do everything you can. And if you have the power to eliminate hunger, eliminate houselessness, eliminate lack of Medicaid, lack of health care, and you still don't do it, God tells you watch out. And don't sit there and tell me that you are a Christian and you believe in God. When Jesus' own brother James said, what good is it if you see someone hungry and you walk by and say thoughts and prayers? What good is it if you see someone unclothed and say, hope that works out for you? No, your faith must have works or else it is dead. So stop preaching dead faith and preach the faith of the living God and demand care not cuts and stop the war on the poor and let's start fighting against poverty once again. And so for those of y'all who want to get engaged and get active, I want to share with you a little number. It happens to be y'all's number. So please call and let them know. If you will call 1-888-897-9753. That is the general switchboard. Again, that number is 1-888-897-9753. And let them know. Care, not cuts. War on poverty, not war on the poor. And let them know that you will remember in November, and we will make sure that we hold them accountable every day up until then, that if, again, you are going to say you are a follower of Christ, why are you walking down a different path? Amen.
So we want to thank everybody. First, can we hear Elizabeth? Big words, big claps for our speakers here today. We are so happy that we're in a moment where people are aware of what's going on and are fighting back. Regardless of what happens today, we are in it for the long run. We are called to be the light of the world, a light to darkness, and here we are. So my friends, just for those who want to take your advocacy today one step further, Will has told us that there is an event up at the House Triangle at 4:30. So join your vets, join the speaker, join those folks who can bring their voices. Speaker Pelosi. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the other speaker. We want you to come on out, stay up here, keep fighting. It's the right fight. Thank you all, and have a very good day.
Yeah! Woo! Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you for joining.